Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrea Mansfield, Chair of the Charter Revision Commission. I know we don't quite have a quorum yet. We're waiting for a couple more of our members to join us. So if you can just give us a few minutes, I'm sure we'll be ready to start, hopefully in the next couple minutes.
We're expecting only 6 of us tonight, though, right? But okay.
Correct. Yes. I know David Kaufman's not able to join us this evening.
Okay.
Okay, I know I see Tori just joined us. Hi, Tori, how are you?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Sorry, your box changed locations when you turned your camera on. I lost track of you for a second.
Oh, yeah, trying to get everything straight down now.
And Tori, we're waiting just a few minutes. We have you, Tom, Ashley, and myself, and we're waiting for I guess either Larry or Stephen to give us a quorum so we can begin our meeting.
Sounds good. I'm going to be getting settled here in just a moment.
Okay, great. Okay, and I see that Stephen Waddy has now joined us as well. Good evening, Stephen. Okay, so Laura, I believe so we now have a quorum. Are you me to go ahead and start? Okay, great. All right, well, good evening, everyone. As you know, today is December 16th, 2001, and this is our virtual meeting of the Anne Arundel County Charter Revision Commission, and we are now in session. And tonight we will hold our second public hearing to hear from the public on redistricting in the county. And probably as most of you already know, every 10 years, following the U.S. Census results, the County Council is required to appoint an Anne Arundel County Charter Revision Commission. The commission has several purposes, one of which is to evaluate the composition of the current county council districts and to make recommendations to the county council for any necessary adjustments to the boundaries of the districts. And the goal in doing that is to ensure that each member of the county council represents about the same number of people in order to achieve equal representation for all. There are constitutional guidelines for redistricting to ensure that the compactness and the contiguity of the geographic area of each district and maintaining the communities of interest. And as I said, tonight is the commission's second public hearing on the issue of redistricting in the county. Our first hearing was this past Monday evening in the county council chambers. And I did want to say, so we are, our commission, we are strictly looking at the councilmanic districts in Anne Arundel County. I know there's a lot of different redistricting meetings and things that are going on right now for congressional districts, state districts, and other jurisdictions, but the purpose and our function is to specifically look at the councilmanic districts in Anne Arundel County. With that, so as you know, we're having a public hearing this evening, and now we would now like to hear from members of the public who are signed up to speak. I know we have 30 individuals that signed up today before 5 o'clock. So we are going to start with those. And actually what I'm going to do, I will call everyone's name in the order that we received your sign-up information. Would ask when it's your turn to please unmute yourself and begin by stating your name and address for the record. And your remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. And Ms. Corby, who says council admin, she'll be keeping the time for you and let you know when that time is up, when your time is up. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to call our first speaker, And our first speaker this evening is Mr. Brian Gant. I'm sorry.
Hi, thanks for making this open to the public and taking questions. So the first question is why, what's driving the deadline?
And actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Gant, actually, we're taking public comments. We're not taking questions. So we won't have a questions and answers with those of you that are speaking this evening. You have 2 minutes to make comments to the commission.
Yeah, I apologize, I missed that. So I guess my comment would be, it feels like this is rushed. Maybe there was, well-documented steps along the way, but I sure didn't see them. And it feels like this is being crammed through in a short time frame. And it just doesn't pass my sniff test. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gant. We appreciate that. So the second individual is Amy Leahy.
Hi, this is Amy Leahy. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My comments are sort of similar to what the previous gentleman said. This seems rather rushed. I actually am very involved in what's going on in the county. I served for a total of 3 years on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the General Development Plan, which at one point started out to be very open to the public and very detail oriented, but towards the end of that process, we were very rushed to the point where the county council had hundreds of amendments that were put in to the point where they were bundled at the end. And so what started out as a process that should have been very involved and very well thought out and well managed turned out to be, and I hope you don't mind my saying, a shit show at the very end. So I feel like this whole process right now, as one who's very involved in the county and is very involved in what's going on with our processes, this was not well publicized. There was no notification given to the public. There was nothing even in the newspaper. And so people are totally unaware and caught off guard that this county council change is happening. The county council districts is happening. I think it is too much and it's being rushed through. People are not able to comment the way they should be able to. And there's no attention to detail to this.
Thank you, Ms. Leahy. Okay, our third speaker this evening is Stephen Randall.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you, Mr. Randall.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Mr. Randall, just please refrain from cursing.
Inventory. A couple of concerns. I agree with some of the previous speakers. Until something is really settled with the congressional representation and the state representation, it seems a little premature to figure out the county representation. Nonetheless, in looking at the maps that were published, there was a little bit of my concern between Fort Meade and the Naval Academy were being sort of split between different districts. And given that federal institutions, have a big impact on local issues, whether it's traffic, security, or anything else, I'd hate to see the Naval Academy and Fort Meade not be included in any one single district.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Randall. It's nice to hear from you. It's been a little while since we've seen each other at the Odenton Town Center. Hope all is well. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. David Mannion.
Madam Chair, just give me one moment. I have a few phone numbers here. I just need to double check that name with the phone number. I am not seeing the phone number that was used to register or that name in the list I have here.
Okay. All right, then I'll go ahead and move on to the next person. I guess if Mr. Mannion does call in or dial in, just let me know and I'll call him up at that time. Okay, our next speaker, Anne Marie Chamberlain.
Good evening. My name is Anne Marie Chamberlain. Thank you so much for the opportunity to make a comment. It's great to hear you guys speaking and sharing about what's happening in our community. And I'm looking forward to hearing more information about what your plans are for the redistricting. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Our next speaker, Lisa Fry.
Same thing, Madam Chair. Let me just do a quick check of phone numbers here.
Okay.
In a perfect world, the names show up. 437, depending on how people join the meeting, though, it can be hard for me to see that. And I don't see the phone number that was used nor the name in the list here. So I don't think she's here.
Great. Okay. And our next speaker is Richard Furlow. And thank you. Nice to see you, Larry. Commissioner Telford just joined us.
All right, one more phone number check here. I do not see Mr. Furlow in the waiting room either. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. And our next speaker this evening is Miss Barbara Allen.
I don't see Miss Barbara Allen here either. My goodness.
Okay. I guess we'll then just keep moving down through the list. Mr. Michael Odell.
Mr. Odell is here.
Great. And Mr. Odell, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Odell, you have been given permission to speak and you're unmuted, so you should be able to talk and we should be able to hear you. Mr. Odell,
Okay.
are you there? I'm not certain what's happening, Madam Chair. This is Mr. Odell is not muted. He's been given permission to speak. So do you want to try and come back to Mr. Odell as well?
Yes, I will. Yes, and Mr. Odell, I'm not, maybe it's your settings or something, but yeah, I'll come back to you once we go through the list.
Yeah, if it doesn't work right away, and if you seem to be muting or unmuting, you can, and we skip over the names, people can leave the meeting, rejoin. Sometimes that fixes the issues.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay. Then our next speaker is Miss Jennifer Jomelan.
So her name was here and it just disappeared from the list. Jennifer, did we lose you? I'm not certain what happened. She might have left the meeting and tried to rejoin, maybe to resolve issues, hoping that her name will also pop back up. So maybe we should mark her name to come back to.
Yep, circle her as well. Okay, Miss Linda Davis. Yay, we have a winner. Okay, we have a winner.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Linda Davis, and I live at 215 Cornet Drive in Linthicum, Maryland. I live in District 1 and want to remain in District 1 because I appreciate the diversity in my district. I believe diversity makes us better as individuals and makes our society better. I believe homogeneity and segregation are harmful to all of us and make people who are socialized as white vote against our own interests. The redistricting maps are one way to maintain or dilute the diversity in all of the districts. This commission and the Anne Arundel County Council should do the least harm by choosing a map based on simple reapportionment that doesn't dilute the diversity of the districts in general and dilute the Black vote in particular. I believe adjustment plan map number 2 has the least amount of change for current incumbents and potential candidates and the least amount of reapportionment changes of the suggested maps. The map also maintains contiguity of the peninsulas, unlike maps 5, 6, 6B, and 7. Upon initial viewing of all of the maps, it seems to me as though all of the maps except for map 2 would dilute the diversity in all of the districts and dilute Black voting power. Maps 5, 6, 6B, and 7 would do so intentionally. This commission should recommend and the county council should vote to approve adjustment plan map 2 expeditiously and have it ready for the February 22nd filing deadline. The vote should not be delayed because the county council risks having another more Republican council vote on maps. Maps 5, 6, and 7 are a nightmare vision of Republican gerrymandered redistricting, which would dilute the diversity in all of the districts and dilute Black voting power. I strongly encourage you to vote for adjustment plan map number 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Jeremy Washington.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yep, we can hear you, Mr. Washington.
Okay, so funny how she was mentioning about diluting the Black vote of the made by the Republican map, where map 6 was quite literally made by a Black person for the Black vote. And my complaint about this one currently with map 2 is simply there seems to be too much red tape and rushing to just get this map approved, where a lot of the other maps I've gotten to pay attention and actually talk to a lot of people about it and look at and review. Yet this one seems to come out of nowhere and needs to be rushed in and put in practically overnight. That, again, as the other gentleman said earlier, doesn't pass the sniff test and it doesn't pass mine. That the whole thing that we're going to dilute the Black vote while we're making a map specifically for encouraging and strengthening the Black community by calling this one racist and made by Republicans. I took a lot of time and interest into the maps and making sure that they were strongly bipartisan. And I have to say that just going with this map of map 2 is going to be the one that's worse for everybody instead of the one that is well thought out, well planned, and well agreed upon with the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Our next speaker this evening is Mr. Charles Muskin.
Okay, same thing. Mr. Muskin is can speak. He's been unmuted by me. Mr. Muskin, you can talk. You can also look for prompts on your screen that tell you to unmute or mute. Try to do this one more time.
Mr. Muskin, it looks like you just remuted yourself.
Mr. Muskin, are you there? I thought I heard something.
No, I did as well.
I thought it was me though.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay, Tom.
I know Mr. Muskin, so I'm hoping to hear from him.
Okay, Mr. Muskin, if you're having any troubles, you can leave the meeting and rejoin, and then we can, I think Ms. Mansfield will call your name again, and we can try this exercise again. You should look for a prompt to mute or unmute yourself. Yeah, he just left. So.
Yeah, and I guess and individuals, there's a call-in number as well, correct? So if they're having issues with their computers, they could also call in by phone.
Yes, everyone's the email that everybody got should have call-in information in it as well.
Is that why we got a number of people where there was nothing on the screen and just a voice?
So everyone is just voice and name. We're not, we did this with the council, and when you take video and you go into people's homes, sometimes you can have,
okay.
you know, we don't want to violate personal space.
Okay, understood. That makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Certainly. Okay, Ms. Mansfield, who's next?
Yep. Next we have Nicole Dial.
Okay, she's one of our telephone numbers here. I don't see her telephone number in the list, and I do not see the name, Nicole.
Okay.
So it indicates to me that she's not here, she's not in the meeting for whatever reason.
Okay.
But Nicole is spelled somewhat non-traditionally. I think it's N-I-C-H-O. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I still have the names in ABC order, so I'm not seeing anything closely relating that. Also, do not see a telephone number that looks like the one that she used to register. So I don't think she's in the meeting yet.
Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Ms. Heather Bertlett.
Hello?
Yes, I'm Ms. Bertlett. Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I would like to echo that it feels like this is rushed on the heels of our congressional maps and all discussion of redistricting focused on that, to the disappointment of many of us. A more conservative voice was not considered in that gerrymandered situation. And I think that this particular reapportionment should be given more time. I certainly am trying to stay on top of what's going on, and I represent RWAC, which is Republican Women of Anne Arundel County. And my members would like to know, and we haven't had a chance to look at the maps, get it out. I don't know where you've advertised it, but I really am just finding out about this week, and it's the holiday. So I hope you'll postpone any decision at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Bertlett.
We need.
Sorry, I thought we were finished.
All right. Our next speaker is Mr. Robert Lurch. Okay, Mr. Lurch, I can see that you're with us, but you're still on mute.
If you do not see that, there should be a prompt to mute and unmute. If that does not work and you're on a phone, *6 on your phone should do the trick.
Yeah, Mr. Lurch, you're still muted.
A brief moment of unmuting, I thought. Gosh, gosh, I'm really sorry. Again, you have to unmute yourself, which is either going to be a prompt or a button on your screen, or on your phone, it's going to be *6. Madam Chair, do you want to move to the next person? We can come back to Mr. Lurch.
Yes, we'll do that.
If I may, I just wanted to mention very briefly, there's somebody by the name of Ken raising his hand. I saw him a couple times do that. Just letting you know. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Thank you, Emmanuel. Yes, so for those of you that called in and maybe you were not able to register before 5 p.m. today, once we go through the list of those that were pre-registered, we will allow others to make comments at that time. So we'll take a call for comments. You can just hang tight till we get through the list of 30. But first, I'm going to get through the list and then see if any of those that were not on when I called their names, if they've now have joined us to speak. So I think our next speaker, Robert Lurch.
Do you want to try Mr. Lurch again?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to mark that I already called him. Okay. Jennifer Sell.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Jennifer Sell. My address is 444 Linwood Drive, Sabrina Park in 21146, and I'm asking that the county move forward with map 2. Racism is one of the most important issues stemming from the 2020 election, and these maps are only one way that we as a county can confront growing racist violence and segregation. As stated previously, map 2 is the only map that will not dilute Black voting power in our county, and this is the map we should move forward with. I have a 6-year-old who will be able to vote in 12 years. I know that seems like a long time from now, but realistically, it's only this and another redistricting away. Because redistricting has impacts for 10 years, that's a really long time, and it'll have really long-lasting impacts on how the various constituents of our county get a chance to speak for themselves. I want to make sure that all of our citizens get the best chance at having their voice heard, and I think we can do that by moving forward with map 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Snell. Okay, our next speaker this evening is Greg Steele.
You just called your name, Greg.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Steele.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I agree with the lady from earlier from Pasadena or Anne Arundel County, and this meeting was quick, and I haven't seen all the maps of the redistricting, and I'd like to review that more in future meetings if that's available or at all possible. Can anybody answer that for me?
We will, well, I guess we're not really having a question and answer session right now, but we will be continuing our work, and should something go forward, the council will also have public hearings and things on these as well. But right. We're still in our evaluation stage. So, but thank you, right. Thank you, Mr. Steele. Appreciate it.
Thank you. This was for the county, and I was prepared for something else, so that's why I'm caught off guard.
Okay.
So.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Steele. Okay, our next speaker is Patrick McCarthy.
Okay, this is another, I just have to do a quick phone number check here.
Okay, so should I move on?
Hang on, I think we may have him here by phone.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. McCarthy?
Yes, how are you?
Great.
So first of all, I would like to associate my comments with the young lady who was the fan of show business from way back early. She saw a show that I won't repeat because we were asked not to repeat the name of the show, so I won't. But it does seem to me that this has been rushed. I would like to comment though on a couple things. I think that trying to defeat racism by basing things upon race is probably not the best way to go. And I think trying to segregate things as a means for somehow protecting things, that was tried a long time ago. In 1956, the Supreme Court got rid of that. I'm the father of 6. I have 2 black son-in-laws. I have 6 black grandchildren. And I don't want them defined by race, and I don't think their parents want them defined by race. So I think we need careful consideration. We should be drawing districts that make good sense, that allow everyone to have a voice. If we want to go with race, then I suppose we should have the Asian map, the Hispanic map, which is a ever-growing map, the black map, the white map, the African map. The maps, we can go on and on and on, but I think that is not the way to go. So I would recommend strongly we not do that. I would also recommend that we take more time to work through all of this. I appreciate everyone's time this evening, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCarthy. And Laura, I see there's another phone number that's on the screen. Okay. All right, gotcha. All right, thanks. Okay, our next speaker then is Ms. Christine Murkowski.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Christine Murkowski. I live at 1871 Harcourt Avenue in Crofton, Maryland, Old Crofton. This did come up awfully quick, but and I didn't have time to view all the maps. However, historically, Old Crofton Triangle has been in District 7, and I believe it should stay in District 7 due to the shared culture and history. Historically, Old Crofton has always been in District 7. So basically, I'm going to keep it brief and end with that.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is Ms. Paulie Kramarczyk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Paulie Kramarczyk. I live at 1560 Hallwood Court in Crofton. And I'm going to second Christine that we're currently in the current District 7. We'd like to keep the Old Crofton Triangle in District 7, which is more of a rural county and area of the county versus a more urban area of the county, which is District 4. It just keeps with the historical culture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Kenneth Wolf.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can. We have a lot of feedback, so I'm not sure if you have this on by phone and computer, or that's much better.
One of the problems is, I think for everybody watching this, there's no way to mute yourself or unmute. There's no button available. I went through every option on here, and you don't have any option. I'm on the computer, and that's why you're getting this background. I'm going to kill that. But the fact that you don't have that option to talk. So to make a long story short, thanks for letting me speak. I'm very concerned about this rush to judgment. I don't understand why. I found about it, only recently. And I'd like to have an opportunity to study this, to understand this. And I think there's no reason that I'm aware of this needs to be pushed at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wolf. Our next speaker is Mr. Peter Smith.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yep, we can hear you fine, Mr. Smith.
I appreciate it. So thank you all for this opportunity to speak here tonight. I have been there in 2000. Just to be fair, I was the county representative for District 1 from roughly in 2012 to 2018 during that period. And so I also had an opportunity to vote on the maps that currently exist today that kept the districts primarily where they are. Based off of the last sort of enumeration that was taken by the Census Bureau. And so I've had the opportunity to be there. There were key principles that I was focused on that I believe were instrumental in our ability to provide the most objective service during this process. And I think that anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a partisan dude. I've always played it square with everyone, and I've always been on the up and up when it comes to my belief. I have had the opportunity to look at every single one of these maps. There are several maps being considered that I believe kind of go outside of the intent of why we are here, and that is to provide balance and fair adjudication of lines that don't alter the historic and geographical boundaries that define those communities. You know, Anne Arundel County already has contiguous and common sense boundaries that, with a few tweaks, can mitigate the imbalance of population growth that has taken place since the last census. You know, DC literally is already broken, and we don't sort of need to pull this with a polarizing fever that impacts its ability to be efficient and effective at times. And if we go into this process with a partisan mindset, we face the potential of immobilizing our efforts to stay above the fray. And so there is a way to bringing down the balance and the deviation down to a reasonable level with between the districts. And I will say, because I've heard it already a couple of times, I did look at the maps, and I will say that I don't believe that maps, certainly 4B, but 5, 6, and 7 do that. They certainly split council districts between peninsulas. They realign communities that have been together for ages, and so they don't fall into that keep it simple. 1, 2, and 3 and 4 fall into that. I'm in a warehouse. I'm literally having volunteers bag for families in need this season. So I am living the way I've always lived. And so when you look at the maps that probably should be considered, it's certainly 1, 2, and 3 because they make the least impact. And if you look at 1, 2, and 3, they specifically have, if you just count the changes, right? And if this is all about keeping it simple, 1 and 3 specifically have about 6 to 9 significant changes that occur. Whether or not this isn't about right or wrong. I'm just saying they alter at least 6 to 9 different changes. The one that has the least amount of changes is 2, because it literally only moves like 3 particular areas that are contiguous to other lines in counties or in the county that already existed. And so for sheer sake of simplicity, 2 is the one that literally keeps the districts all.
Did you just?
I will leave that.
Okay. I was like,
that was not me, but the 2 minutes we did hit our 2-minute mark.
No, I'm sorry about that. I apologize.
But I didn't do.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know. Somebody else here has controls. This is
Yeah. Not sure what happened. Okay. Our next speaker this evening is Mr. Robert Moran.
Okay, I just need to do a quick phone number check here. I do not see Mr. Moran in the list. I do not see the telephone number that he used to register.
Okay.
At the top here either.
Okay. How about Miss Morgan Drayton?
Good afternoon. My name is Morgan Drayton, and I'm speaking on behalf of Common Cause Maryland and as a lifelong resident of Anne Arundel County and Council District 4. First, I want to applaud the Commission for making all 7 of the draft maps under consideration available to the public. The earlier draft maps are released, the more time county residents will have to assess those drafts and prepare valuable and constructive feedback for the Commission before the final maps are brought to a vote. Common Cause Maryland has been working for decades to improve our redistricting process here in the state and lifting up the voices of our members and helping in jurisdictions where we can. While we have no specific position on the draft maps at this time, In light of redistricting battles currently being fought in other parts of the state, we want to stress the importance of drawing a map that is in full compliance with the Voting Rights Act. In the line drawing process, we hope that the Commission will look for opportunities to create majority Black and majority minority districts where it's possible. This is one of several criteria we will be looking for when we work with our demographer to analyze whichever final draft map is decided on. Regardless of which map is chosen, we hope that the Commission will consider holding more public hearings in the new year when people are more likely to be engaged in the process. It is important that county residents understand the significance of redistricting, how lines are drawn, the steps in the process, and the opportunities to engage and give feedback before the final map is brought to a vote. Common Cause Maryland will do our part to do the word out, but our reach will always be kind of limited. We hope that the county government will invest in intentional outreach to communities of interest and major community organizations to get their feedback and suggestions. So again, I want to thank the Commission for their hard work during this process. Common Cause Maryland is dedicated to making the redistricting process as accessible, transparent, and inclusive to county residents as possible. And to that end, we hope the Commission will take on our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Drayton. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Robert Johnston, sorry.
Okay, hi, this is Robert Johnston. I was on a small area plane. I'm pretty up to date on, I thought, a lot of things, and this is like went way under the radar. When I went to the county website, the charter revision isn't even mentioned on there anywhere. So you can go to the county council page, and then it's on there, which it takes you to another link that goes there, and that's only got 2 maps on it. So I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, there was a map 4B and 6B, but no other maps. So I thought that meant that you all had eliminated all the other maps and had gotten down to just these 2, which apparently, from what I'm hearing from other people, is not the case. The rationale behind these changes, I mean, I live in Crofton, and putting Crofton in with Laurel and Odenton just makes no sense. And taking a bite out of it and putting it into another district and then adding Crownsville makes no sense to me either. I mean, I can't see any particular benefit to doing that. So that would be my biggest thing, is that not only is it going way too fast and we got to get this word out a lot better, but the rationale for why they're doing the changes, why on each map, what was the rationale? Why are they making these moves? There has to be a reason or they wouldn't be doing it. So it seems like that would be the most beneficial thing, is to give each map a rationale of why these moves were being made in this way. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Okay, our next speaker is Jesse Novello.
Okay, let me just check these 2 phone numbers. I do not see that name in the list, Madam Chair. I also do not see the phone number that was used to register listed.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on then. Next speaker, Mr. Michael Arndt. Anyone on the list?
Sorry, I do not see that name or telephone number.
Okay. Okay. Next we have Miss Karen Weis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Miss Weis. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I live in Pasadena. I have not had an opportunity to review all of the maps. What I think about this process is that it's been rushed and it's been handled much like a star chamber. There's no transparency here, except for the very transparent need or desire to completely quash conservative voices and disrupt Republican districts. This process needs more time. There's no reason why the maps that we currently have cannot stand in place through 2022. It certainly needs more transparency. It needs more public input. And to have more public input, you actually need to share information with the public. So I would strongly encourage the commission to do that and to think about what you've heard tonight from all of the speakers, especially considering that there is no reason to try and create majority Black or majority Hispanic or majority white districts, but to simply put in districts that make sense and represent the actual populations of those districts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Weis. Our next speaker is Mr. William Simpson.
Okay, just a quick phone number check here. I'm sorry, I don't see the name or the telephone number in our list.
Okay. All right. And that was the last speaker on the list, but let me go back up. I know we had a few individuals that tried to speak earlier, but were having issues with getting unmuted. Have any of them rejoined us? Or?
Yes, I do see one or two back. If you want to just call those names and we can try it again.
Okay. I'm hoping I circled them all correctly. I think the first, Michael Odell.
Yes.
See the first one? Okay. Yes, Mr. Odell.
You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, Mr. Odell, we still can't hear you. It appears you're still on mute.
Oh, unmuted. Mr. Odell, can you talk?
Okay, Mr. Odell, we still can't hear you.
So it appears everything's working on this end. It could be a technology issue. Mr. Odell, if you want to leave and rejoin, sometimes that resolves the issue. Sometimes you need to check the settings on your computer for your mic and audio.
Yeah. Or would you like to try to call in?
You can also call in. Yeah, the email that everybody got has call-in information as well. I do see, I think, one or two others here maybe that we missed the last time. We can try Mr. Odell if he rejoins again.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Odell, please try again. Maybe try calling. Okay, Jennifer Jumalan, is she on now?
Yes, let's try Jennifer.
Great.
Jennifer, go ahead and talk. Okay, also, I'm not seeing any reason on this end why it's not working. We have microphone turned on, permission to speak, and you need to unmute yourself, which it looks like has been done. So it could be a setting once again, and as Ms. Mansfield has pointed out once or twice, you can call in using the call-in information in that email that you got that confirming your registration. If you use the same telephone number, we can link you up. Okay, so it's not working. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Okay. Do you want to try Mr. Odell again?
Yeah, Mr. Odell, are you with us now?
He is. Let's see. Okay, he's been given permission to speak. He appears to be unmuted. Mr. Odell, from everything I can see on this side of things, you should be able to talk. We should be able to hear you.
Okay, and I see your hands, but we're just not able to hear you.
We do still have the online testimony tool. I understand this is frustrating for anybody that this is not working out for. You can still go online and submit your thoughts and testimony through our.
Can you hear me?
Ah, there we are.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
We have
finally.
you.
Yay. Sorry for the technology problem here. Oh, I'm used to speaking down in Annapolis in person. So I want to thank the chair and all the committee members and the state senators and delegates that got in touch with me about this meeting. I have reviewed, I have the current county council districts, Plan 4B and Plan 6B. And I've reviewed this and I listened to your last week's testimony so I could be caught up to date on it. I have a couple of things. Plan 4B. I like Plan 4B because it sticks kind of with what we have now, and you've expanded some and reduced some. Like District 2 that I live in, you reduce some of the west side, the east side, and increase the west side. What I'm concerned with is all the people that are in these districts, they have something in common. They have common needs and stuff. And I think that chart shows a good outlook. It's like we have now, but just extend it out a little bit more. Plan 6B, I have 4 problems with that. Up in District 1, you just, that's on the tip, it goes into District 3, which is kind of weird. I know it was done with the software stuff, but, you know, I'm a person and I'm a voter. So I look at it a little bit different than a computer does. District 5, where it comes over to District 4 and stuff, I think that should be more like Plan 4B, where it goes straight up. Because these people have things in common there. Same thing with 6. Now, you got 6 on Plan 6B that separates 6 from one side to the other instead of going straight up like it went before. District 7, I think you enlarged that too far. That's why I think District 6 on Plan 4B is more like we need. So I appreciate the work that you've done on it and the people that have worked on it. It may need to be tweaked a little bit more, but if I were to vote, if I were part of the committee, I'd go with Plan 4B because it makes more sense to me as a citizen and as a person here in Severn. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Odell. And I'm glad we were finally able to hear from you. We appreciate your time. All right. So Jennifer Joldeman, would you like to try again?
Let's try that again. Maybe Mr. Odell casts the spell, the magic spell that will make everyone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. You're right.
I'm on the telephone.
Oh, okay, great.
I'm anywhere you can hear me. I mean, this is crazy because on my screen, I'm on an iPad, and I also have you on the television, and I have no mute and unmute buttons.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you. I'm glad you called in. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say good evening, and I'm a resident of Anne Arundel County, and I'm not in agreement of moving forward on this redistricting issue at this present time. And the majority of the residents, which you have heard over and over again tonight, Anne Arundel County are not even aware that this is happening. They haven't seen the maps. You know, it's just a lot of confusion. And we, the people of Anne Arundel County, have been preparing for our holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, family and friends getting together, shopping, and not only just problems with shopping, the gas prices and the grocery prices, everything's going up. So we're trying to finagle this at the same time that this is coming out at us. So I'm not happy with this. And one more thing, we're dealing with the COVID. So how many things would you like us to deal with? We're multitasking and we're not getting paid. So there doesn't need to be a rush or push these changes through. And this can wait till next year where we can examine and closely have an educated opinion. By moving forward now, you've chosen to disrespect the residents of Anne Arundel County and on this redistricting process. So let's just work together and do the right thing for Anne Arundel County. Need I say more? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Aleman. Okay, I think the next individual, Charles Muskin. Are you still with us?
Can you hear me, Madam Chairwoman?
Yes, I can.
I'll start by thanking you for giving me a second opportunity. I'll start by noting that Mr. Fleckenstein is the only one with a tie.
Of course, Your Honor.
And I'll say hello to Ms. Shewitt, who I believe I served with on the alumni board at the law school with. I have only 4B and 6B to review, and I'll make a few comments. I look at the makeup of our current county council. I was very happy to hear former Councilman Smith testify, but it really almost shocks me that we do not have what I believe in the legal world is called a majority-minority district to ensure that the council represents the community as a whole. And I don't believe 4B does that and 6B does. The other thing I like about 6B is having lived for 15 years in legislative district 30B, where my legislators in Annapolis and my legislators on the county council were different than my neighbors. I like the idea that they do parallel each other, going across the two rivers there, but on District 6 on Plan 6B. My other comment is, when I look at 4B, which it calls itself simple, I don't see it simple at all. I see large sections that have been moved from one district to another, while at the same time other sections have been moved vice versa. This is especially true in districts 1 and 2. It seems like there's almost like a whack-a-mole. We moved District 6 down on the east side and District 2 up on the west side, and that makes no sense to me. So for those reasons, and I'm trying not to be legal on this because I've been in court on voting issues before, I think 6B is a much more appropriate map to move forward with what I think the courts are looking at these days. And I thank you for that. Mr. Fleckenstein has a puzzled look on his face. Do you want to ask me a question in my 2 minutes?
I wish we could. It's great to hear from you. I'm glad you're well, sir. Hope to see you soon.
I the same. Thank you again, Madam Mansfield, for allowing me the opportunity to come in and give my 2 cents worth.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Muskin. Great night. Okay. I believe Robert Lurch was the next individual that was trying to speak.
Yes, I see Mr. Lurch he's actually here twice. So we're going to try the first name. See if that works. Mr. Lurch, can you unmute yourself? Okay, let's try the other Robert Lurch. Mr. Lurch, I have done what we call giving you the okay to talk. You need to unmute yourself, it looks like. It could be a button on your screen.
I've unmuted.
Okay. There you are. Great.
Yeah, I switched over from my phone to my computer.
One of those devices you want to turn down or turn off because you're going to get some feedback.
Right, I've turned off the phone. I just wanted to reiterate what everyone else has said, since it looks like I'm one of the last people to speak. I pushed the unmute button several times earlier. I couldn't get through. I appreciate the fact that you gave me another opportunity. I'm just an average citizen in Brownsville here in District 3. And I agree with all the other people that this is being rushed. I think we need to slow down. As a conservative here in Anne Arundel County. I want to be represented properly. I think that District 3 is been, gerrymandered is the term I think that most people use. And I'd like to be able to see more aligned with the governor's map, the one that he went and got with an impartial commission. That's the reason why I've hung on, because I feel that as a conservative, my viewpoints are being eroded in this state. And that's the reason why I've hung on here.
Great, great. Thank you, Mr. Lurch. Yes, we appreciate that you did. Thank you for speaking. Okay, and I believe the other individual was Robert Moran. Is he still with us?
We do not have, doesn't appear that we do. Let me quickly check the number here. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't see him in the waiting room at all. It doesn't appear that he's joined the meeting.
Okay. All right, and I guess Ms. Colby, was that the list that you, as far as those we needed to go back and revisit, were our list the same? Did I miss anybody out of the first 30 that tried to speak that had problems?
I think we circled back to the people that rejoined. If you want to give people an opportunity to raise their hands now, we can go
Yes.
back.
Okay. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody that pre-registered. Okay.
And, Madam Chair, just make sure, because we're doing this, I probably have people's names, just have people state their name for the record so we can match everything up.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, I know we have several other individuals that joined us this evening, and I guess now I would open it up for others that may have comments they would like to make about the redistricting process here in Anne Arundel County. Yeah, I guess I would just ask if you could please raise your hand so Ms. Corby can identify you, and if you could please say your name when you begin your comments. Okay, and I see Mr. David, I'm going to assume it's Morseberger?
Yes, that's me. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Yep.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me speak with my hand raised. I basically agree with a lot of folks of this being rushed, and however, if this must be done in support of the 2022 election, which the primary is in June and the registration is in February, I move that you go to map 4B, and I assume it's down to 2 maps, 4B and 6B, because those are the only 2 on the website. I request that because there's a lot of movement that has happened, assuming the districts will be similar to the ones that exist now. It would really change up the current registrations for office in Anne Arundel County, whether it's council districts, central committee members. It's really going to mess things up. So I'd recommend going with 4B. I do recommend if we have to go to something like a 4B now, that the commission starts earlier in 2030, so that I went to one of your meetings in person where you talked about maybe you want to go to 9 councilmatic districts. Tori Snow, I do like 6B, but I think it's such a drastic change in such a short period of time. So I think perfection is the enemy of good enough going into the 2022 elections. So I think more time should be spent on your ideas and really getting the community involved in the concepts between your ideas, because I think they were good ideas, but let's not rush it, and let's not, totally turn over the apple cart that's already in motion for the 2022 elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morseberger. Okay, would anyone else like to speak?
Madam Chair, we have 2 people, or 2 or 3 people here. I'm just going to allow them to talk.
All right. So next, Susan Jacinto.
Hi, this is Susan Giacinto. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I have had a difficult time trying to find these maps on the county website. It has not been a good public campaign here. I get the constituent services email every week. There's been no mention of that at all from James Kitchen about any of this. So you would reach a large portion of people if information had gone out in one of those newsletters. And also, when you go to the county website, if it's there, it's buried. There was no mention of tonight's meeting. And again, as everyone else, or as many people have said tonight, this is not the way to get citizen input on such a crucial thing. And again, everyone feels this is rushing. So I would strongly suggest that you give the public more time for input on this. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for all your hard work on the commission.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Giacinto. Okay, next, I see we have Ms. Marcia Perry. Ms. Perry, can you hear me? Or can you unmute yourself? There you go.
You really want to hear from me? Okay. All right. I've been patiently sitting here with an adult beverage to boost me on. But anyway, I disagree with several of the speakers from Crofton, where I have lived since 1964, and remembering well at many hearings in South County when District 7 wanted to make Route 50 the Gaza Strip and keep us with Chunky Childs up in District 4. And I wasn't even sure who Chunky Childs was at the time, but thanks to Jack Cade and a few others, I learned quickly who he was. So I fought that battle and kept us with District 7 at the time, thinking that our interests were all environmentally in tune. And I'm known as a tree hugger, an environmental wacko, whatever. But in that tune, I'm in with South County. But I learned very much in the last few years working with other resident communities in Odenton and along the Patuxent River that our soul is really attached to West County, and Crofton would be best served by connecting, especially what we learned through the discussions plan 2040, of being attached to Odenton and to West County. We've been the dumping ground for South County for long enough now. Just look at the Route 3 corridor. You go south on Route 2, you don't see what we have in Crofton and north. So I very much like the idea of being attached to Odenton. As a community, I'm not attached officially to the Crofton Civic Association board, but having served on it serving close to it since 1970 something or another, I'm attached to how they're thinking about things. But I am a board member of Crofton First, and very much attached to their thinking about what has happened to the Route 3 corridor, and every effort that's been made by these different community groups in West County to work close together. We've attended countless meetings together. We send endless emails to each other. We are very much tuned into the hip at the West County community groups. And I'm delighted to think that we could be connected to the Odenton community that was here long before Crofton was. And if you want to talk about history, and I was a history teacher at one point in my life, Odenton, it has the history. Those people and their ancestors farmed the land, developed the land in a very nice way. And they welcomed Fort Meade and all the diversity that brought to West County. And would be very, very proud to have Crofton connected to that. The triangle, excuse me for saying so, but I live in the triangle. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I am a member of the greater Crofton community.
Thank you, Ms. Perry.
I apologize. I'm an ex-politician or whatever, so forgive me.
Thank you. Okay, and our next speaker, Rajwa Abu Rahman, and I apologize.
That's okay. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. My name is Rudwan Abruman. I'm the president of the Arundel County. I represent 18,000 Muslims in the county, and that's before COVID, because we get more after COVID. So we don't know how many, but they live all over the county. And it seems to me that most of the speakers stole my notes. So because it says, why the rush? The first thing I note, it says, why the rush? So why are you rushing before giving us time to look at the maps? My community is very aggressive in business. We own business from right at the border of Baltimore City and Ritchie Highway in Brooklyn down to Deal. So wherever you go, there is Muslim businesses. I represent them all. And this map is definitely out of the question, is no good at all. You need to look again. None of the maps are good. I agree with the first speaker. I forgot his name, but I know I hear to Amy, Leahy, Randall, and then later on Peter Smith came, which I appreciate very much what he said. Now, the county council going to take your recommendation to make us 8 and 9. Why? They're using that too to extend their terms from two terms to 3 terms. Most of us came from kingdoms. We don't want a kingdom. We don't need kings in the county. Why they want to use they're going to use you to make 8 or 9 council or district. And that is not good at all. So I think you need to give us more time. And if you don't know, many of the councilmen already put signs out and they start knocking at doors. Wouldn't you think it's a shame now? You're going to change them. You say, oh, you knock at the doors, wrong this. So it is, you're rushing to this. I think you want to wait after the election coming next year. And if you want to suggest after that, be my guest. You can't change the border, and I understand you are commissioned to do that. So if you want to change the border, fine, but do not destroy the harmony done in each district. And do not recommend by any means to increase the district. We need more councilmen. Actually, if you can take that down to 3 or 4, maybe even better than 7, not 8. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I know you all work hard, whether you have a necktie or not, because I'm not having a necktie this evening. So, Mr. Thomas, good for you. Keep wearing the necktie. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and happy holidays for all of you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Abdul-Rahman. Okay.
People love the tie. Well, who knew?
Yeah. And you know, your name's going right across it, so I can't see what it looks like. We all need to wear one next meeting. Okay.
Completely nondescript.
I was thinking Commissioner Hangleiter's shirt would get all the attention with the.
I know. So Ms. Corby, do we have anyone else that would like to speak?
I do not see anyone else raising their hands, which again is what I'm looking for here to turn on those speakers. I do not see that. Looks like we have gotten to a stopping point.
Okay, great. Okay, well, and that concludes our public hearing for this evening. I want to thank all the members of the public that joined us this evening to provide comment. I think your comment is very important in this process, and having a public process is very important, I think, to all of us serving on the commission. So thank you very much for being with us, and happy holidays to all of you.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask a quick question? Since we have so many members of the public here, 22, 23, would it help, do you think, if I showed real quick where everything is on the website?
Yes, thank you. That's a great suggestion, Ms.
All right, I'm going to do that. Okay, so I've taken us to Anne Arundel County's website. It's aacounty.org. Because the commission, this Charter Revision Commission that you all are a part of, is a council-appointed commission, you fall under the county council. So if you click government, you get county council, click county council, and you go to the county council's homepage. And the Charter Revision Commission is exploited quite a bit on our homepage. So we have a red banner up here. We have public hearings highlighted here. Over here, we have council commissions. So I'm going to just take the easiest route here. I'm going to click on this red banner where it says Charter Revision Commission. And it's going to take us to the Charter Revision Commission webpage. There is so much information posted here. The historical documents are fascinating. What we have done is I've had current stuff posted right here. So if it's something that is being discussed at the current meeting or was discussed at the current meeting, you'll see it here. And then what we have is all of your meetings here organized in these accordions, and it indicates whether it was virtual or in person. So for example, if we go to November 29th and expand that, you will see all kinds of things here. The video, this was the presentation or report that was presented. There are some of the maps that you have reviewed there. December 1st has the same nuggets of goodness here. The presentation, again, the whole thing captured in the video. And so that is how you will go and check out everything that the commission has done, see maps, you can see videos, you can see meeting minutes. If it is virtual, it will have the information. All that good stuff is there. We have dates posted here, the resolution that appointed you, of course, the most important part here. So anyway, it is here. Again, it is on the county council page because it's a county council appointed commission. So I hope that helps.
Sorry, I just realized that I muted myself. Yes, thank you, Ms. Corby, for sharing that information with everybody.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Because say again.
No, I was just looking to see who said Madam Chair.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Because we have a number of members of the public here, I think it's actually pretty important that I bring a message to the attention of the commission and the chair, and perhaps an opportunity to clarify an item. So I received, someone passed a message to me that said a message went out, and it said, the Anne Arundel County Charter Review Commission is holding a virtual public hearing today. Please sign up to testify on behalf of MAP 2. There are 7 sample maps. Maps 5, 6, and 7 are recommendations from a radical conservative. All of the maps, except for map 2, would dilute Black voting power. Maps 5, 6, 6B, and 7 would do it intentionally, while the first 4 maps are based on computer-based reapportionment. Please use the following link to testify at the meeting. Madam Chair, I would really appreciate if you would set the record straight of that message for the benefit of the public.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Snow, for raising that. I mean, I guess I would like to share, and just based on also some of the public comment. I mean, I think, we've had several meetings now. I think all of us have been doing the best that we can do as we deal with this process. I think all of us feel strongly we want to create districts that does not disenfranchise anyone in Anne Arundel County. When we came up with the various options, I think Mr. Snow did propose a map for us to consider, and we had a subcommittee group look at that map, as well as one of the simple adjustment maps, simple adjustment number 4, to come up with a couple of proposals for the commission to consider, and those are what you've seen on the website. So I mean, I would say, I think we are doing the best job. I think we are trying to be fair and balanced, and I think all of us are bringing proposals to the table that we think will try to accomplish that. So I don't want the public to think there was anything untoward with pulling those together. But I think as going through our process, we did set a goal early on that we were going to try to achieve the intentions of the council and the resolution that they passed, which has us presenting our maps to the council by December 31st. I think that's kind of the timeline that we've been working under. We did have a small group work to pull together some map alternatives for the commission to consider, and that's where we now have maps 4B and 5B. Just to clarify,
I just wanted to make sure that people understood that the stance of the commission is that we were going to move forward with 2 recommendations, that none of the other maps were under consideration.
I don't agree. I don't think that was the stance of the commission. The stance of the commission has been that we will present multiple maps, not 2 maps, multiple maps to the council. And we have not decided on any particular map at this moment. I think Mr. Telford tried to get 2 maps to be agreed to at the council, by the council through the commission chair at the last, when she went to the work session. And that was an attempt. I didn't hear the commission agree on that at all. So these 2 maps, we always agreed on multiple maps to be presented.
Yeah, I guess to clarify, if I could, as the chair, I think, yes, we have 2 maps, and I guess how I was viewing this is that we had maps for public comment. Yeah, I mean, we do have simple adjustment maps that have been presented to us by the Office of Planning and Zoning. I was very interested in hearing the public comment, because I really thought the public comment would then help inform us, inform our work in terms of whether those are the 2 options we want to put forth. Do we want to consider another option to put forth? But I do think, I've been kind of working under the premise that we would be sending multiple options to the council for their consideration. So I think that's kind of where we are right now in terms of, I guess we're kind of moving into our map deliberation section of the agenda, which I think is, looking again back at 4B and 6B. Do members have questions, or would they like to see some changes to those that maybe the Office of Planning and Zoning could work on and get to us? And I think now that we've heard public comment, I think it's then on us to kind of have that conversation as to whether or not we would like some other options considered in this mix, so we can get the same type of analysis done that we did have done for 4B and 6B, and then how those will play into our final report, or at least our draft report that we can present to the council. I guess, Mr. Fleckenstein, I see your hand is up. If I can ask, sorry, Mr. Fleckenstein, if I can ask if you could please raise your hands, that way I can see you. I can call on you to speak so I don't get lost in the shuffle. Yeah, Mr. Fleckenstein.
I do think it's a good suggestion by Mr. Snow to kind of clarify a couple things while the public portion of the meeting, I guess, is still going on. There were a couple times with some different comments that some people had that I was thinking it might have been a little better for us to actually have been able to kind of address those things, because I think there's some things that people did have some misunderstandings. The first, I think, to Mr. Snow's point, I mean, I think the public should know that all of these maps, at least other than 6B, all of the maps were drawn and presented initially by the Office of Planning and Zoning. They weren't drawn by any individual, any group, anything like that. And then even the map 6B, which has been proposed initially by Mr. Snow, has been reviewed by Office of Planning and Zoning and has been reviewed and had some information added to it from our small work group. So to the extent that there's any idea that somehow those maps were drawn by someone other than the Office of Planning and Zoning for our consideration and with the commission's input, I do think that needs to be clarified that that's not the case. And the other, a lot of people under the impression that this commission somehow is rushing to judgment. And obviously, I think most of the individuals who are under that impression are not aware that they're at current, there is a legal deadline for us to meet to make our recommendations to the council by December 31st. So I'd like that to be clarified for those members of the public that are here. But that also, once these maps go to the council, there is going to be other deliberations. There will be other opportunities for public input as well. So I think for those people that have that concern, the public needs to understand what the legal ramifications, the legal deadlines are for us, but also that that's not the end of any potential public input.
Oh, sorry, I'm moving again. Thank you, Mr. Fleckenstein. Mr. Waddy?
I did have my Wi-Fi is coming in and out, so please bear with me if it goes down while I'm speaking. But I did hear Councilmember Smith speak about map 2, and I would like map 2 to be considered by the council on this from this commission. I think maps 1 through 4 are really the maps that have, as I've said previously, we need to make small tweaks and not have a lot of movement on these maps, as maps 5, 6, and 7 and 6B have attempted to do. I think we wasted a lot of time talking about maps 5, 6, 6B, and 7. And I think that, they in and of themselves are, changes that didn't need to be made. They're poorly justified. I think the justification was around newspaper articles and books that may have been read. And as I said, I think that when you have District 6 in map 6B it's basically an island on 2 peninsulas. And that I tried to bring that out in the last meeting, where the contiguity of the entire district is broken by a river running through it. And if you were to look at District 7 in that map, in map 6B, it looks like, as we said, the fire-breathing dragon. And so from my perspective, it would replace the current gerrymandering image that we always see of an ostrich. And now we would have the fire-breathing dragon from Anne Arundel County. It'd be an embarrassment. And that's why I'm finding it to be an embarrassment to continue to talk about it and to even, have had wasted time of OPZ in creating these maps. And then in the last meeting, I did have to listen as my words were taken, and my suggestions about having data that was nonpartisan, data that was coming from the county to be used to make maps. The data was not given, you can go back to the hearings, they're all recorded. Data was, I was told that we would not be receiving data. It would take a long time to use. We don't have, this is a serious thing. We're doing something serious. The issues that I was trying to bring out in terms of education, any of those issues were kind of pushed to the side. And then we spent the next 3 meetings, even a meeting of, a small group meeting, discussing maps that are legally questionable, that are population-wise questionable. And like I said, when my words are used to justify them, I just, it's offensive to me. And, if that's something that, other commissioners may feel is being problematic, then it's a citizen, Commissioner Snow brought the map to us. He said this. It's not like there was a initiative that came from the Office of Planning and Zoning to create maps 5, 6, 7, and 6B. Commissioner Snow said, I've been working on this. I'm bringing this to you. He brought it to us. He asked OPZ to work on these things. They've done it willingly, without complaint. The other commissioners, including myself, have allowed this to go on when we shouldn't have. And now the population at large considers there to be 2 maps. And it's that much more disgusting of how this commission would be embarrassing itself if people are even to consider that map 6B is legally possible, let alone a representation of how this community works. So it's just, it's funny to me, but at the same time, it's expected. So, that's why I can't imagine us having to spend any more time. And I know that we will, because I know that that's how this works. When you're a propagandist, you deflect, you deny, you dismiss, and you do whatever you can to demean, defund, and destroy. And when you come from a district that has voted and will continue to destroy, then I don't know why you feel like you deserve a voice on this commission, but we will continue to listen to you. and
Okay.
should be grateful for that.
I guess, Mr. Waddy, thank you for your comments. I guess I would like to clarify a couple of things, though. I mean, I guess I would want just to start by reiterating, I think all of us were appointed to serve on this commission. I think all of us want to ensure we're doing what we can to ensure proper representation, and we don't want to just disenfranchise anyone. I guess
I don't know.
I don't know
that. I think some people come from districts
Mr.
that
Waddy, I let you
may
speak,
not
Mr.
have
Waddy.
a problem
Please
with
let me speak,
disenfranchising
Mr. Waddy. Thank you. I mean, I will say though, something that I've been struggling with from the beginning, and I guess I still am struggling, but I do feel we do have a couple jurisdictions that have really grown population-wise, and I guess I do feel if we don't take action and we don't propose something now to address that, we are disenfranchising a good number of people that particularly live in District 1s and District 4, and we're diluting their vote. So I think I struggle, but I think that's where I'm coming from when I really do think that we need to identify, we need to have proposals to send on to the council, because I feel otherwise we're disenfranchising those individuals from those jurisdictions. I would like to clarify though, yes, Mr. Waddy is correct. I mean, Mr. Snow did bring forward maps for the consideration of the commission. However, I mean, he brought those up in a public meeting. He asked if they could be considered, and I think as a commission, there was consensus that yes, we would consider those maps, and that's when they were then given over to planning and zoning to look at those in more detail, just based on how some things were done. Like they needed to be adjustments for population and so forth. It was also at that time that we decided that we would have a subgroup look more closely at that map, and they would pull together a couple options for the commission to consider. I mean, and that's how we got to the maps 4B and 6B. And I do think because I would like us to go in the direction now, and in a professional manner, have a conversation about those. Do we want tweaks on those? And are there other maps? Because I mean, I do think, I think if it's I think 3 options would be fine to present to the county council. Maybe I think we heard a lot of different things tonight. I tried keeping account. I think we had 25 individuals speak. Yes, we did have some comments about the process being rushed. We had some comments from a handful of people talking about simple adjustment 2. We had a couple people say they liked map 4B. We had an individual say they liked map 6B. So I think it's now incumbent upon us to consider those comments. We have the 2 maps, and I think, if we have some changes there, but I think it is fair to put on the table now if we do want to have another map considered. And, maybe we do have 3 options. I'm just throwing things out right now. Simple adjustment. We have our modified 4B, and we have something that more broadly makes changes, which I think addresses a lot of the sentiment that we've heard, a lot of the conversations that we've had as a commission as well. And I guess I view our job, is we're here to give a recommendation to the council. And at that point, the council takes it, and they can choose one, they can vote it up or down. They can make additional changes based on whatever conversations they have. But I think as a commission, we've been appointed to serve in this role to come up with recommendations to send on to them. And I kind of think that's kind of the position where we're sitting in right now. And I'd say the one sticking point that I keep coming back to is that I feel like if we don't make changes, if we don't address these population increases in certain jurisdictions, that we really are going to be disenfranchising people in the county and really diluting their vote, because now we'll have, some jurisdictions will have, I forget the numbers, I don't have the chart right in front of me, but maybe, 10,000 more individuals living in them, and some of the others. And I just really feel we're, diluting their vote in that situation. But I see a couple hands are up now. So Mr. Snow, I'll go with you because you're in my top corner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will just say that throughout this process, I am very, very committed to making sure that we have a citizen involved process and a community focused process. I am actually, even when I presented the map that I presented, everyone here remembers that I presented it very theoretically. I presented it with the philosophical idea that maybe we didn't need to be bound by the current districts that we have, and this was perhaps one option. This is yet another reason that I feel with more discussion, more deliberation. I mean, you know, these processes typically take months to address. That really is the motivation behind anything. And honestly, the product that we even looked at was just supposed to be a starting place. And I thought that we all were in agreement that with deliberation and discussion, that that's where we would be. So I just want that to be known for the benefit of everyone, that this is about the community. And I really would rather the community have preference when we look at these maps rather than the politicians that are sitting in office have the preference, which is basically what we're doing now. So I'm not opposed to recommending multiple maps. I think that right now, none of us really have a clear understanding of any of the maps to be able to make an informed discussion. I'd love to have a discussion about map 4B, look into the economics, look into the demographics, understand the implications of it. Same thing with 6B. And I laid out kind of what I thought the process should look like. And perhaps it wasn't the right forum, but when I sent out the proposed schedule of how we might look, I literally laid out how I felt we should be having this conversation that will allow public input. It will allow us to demonstrate mastery over the concepts that we're examining and then present a highly polished product to the council. I understand that it doesn't seem like we're going that way, and I accept that that may be the will of the commission, but I do want to make it clear for the benefit of everyone involved that my motive from the beginning has been to challenge our assumptions and to maybe say, maybe we don't need the status quo. What I'm hearing is, you know, let's keep the status quo, keep things as they are. And I guess I'll keep that in mind as we revisit other areas in which we want to make dramatic changes, you know, when it comes to the county charter.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Snow. Ms. Hangleiter?
Well, I thank you very much for allowing me to speak here. I want to respond to what Mr. Fleckenstein as well as Ms. Mansfield both said, and I appreciate what your explanation to the public. I think that's very important. However, we're talking about that, oh, you'll still have opportunity to speak. Even once we're done, even after December 31st, you'll still have opportunity to speak. However, if the public does go and speak, and the county council decides to take that advice of the public, as they should, then we have an amendment which therefore throws out our entire timeline and means that we don't meet the February 21st date. So I do feel like that is important to mention, that this is all, especially with the public watching, this is all a matter of if the county council will pass it in that time frame. And I will also say, out of the 25 people who spoke, I did take notes, lots of them here, and 14 people expressed that they believe that the operation was rushed, that our procedures have been rushed, that 6 different people commented that they could not find the information. So while we are appointed by the county council, I believe we are all here to serve the people of the county, and I think we need to take that input into consideration.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Telford.
Following up on that, obviously the most common comment tonight was that this was a rushed process. I know a few of us have been talking about this for a little while, and at least based on the group that showed up tonight, I think they're in agreement with some of us. I do have a question for planning and zoning and legal. Is there any evidence that map 6B is not legal? I want that to be clarified right now if we can.
Lori Blair Klassmeyer, Deputy County Attorney. Not legal in the sense of not balanced, I believe, and I don't have it in front of me or the numbers, I'm sure Mr. Burke does, but I believe that it still had the 10%, was within the 10% variation from the smallest district to the largest district. That's, you know, the presumed constitutionally legal spread between the largest and the smallest. That's really the only issue I've looked at. If there's some other issue someone wants to me to take a look at, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, and a question for Mr. Burt. I thought at our last meeting, you mentioned something about how your software automatically checks for some basic irregularities in the map. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can run compactness tests, whatever we need to test the district against, we can.
And did map 6B fail any of those tests that you ran?
No, it did not. Whenever I ran it through, it passed the test that the software runs.
Okay, thank you. A question to the chair. It seems like as a group, we've been assuming for the past month that we're kind of looking at two maps, and we're now possibly talking about a third one. Isn't this going to start some part of this process over again now that we're looking at map 2, if we are indeed looking at map 2? I mean, aren't we going to treat map 2 the same way we treated the other two maps?
Well, yeah, I guess my thought was we would treat it the same way in that if we were to look at that map, we would have planning and zoning, yes, do the same type of analysis they did with 4B and 6B, you know, identifying the change areas and how all that stuff would shift around. And I guess that's something we need to bring up, obviously, if that's where the direction we're headed, for them to time frame on doing that. I guess I wasn't thinking, I mean, I know that we would put that out on the website like we put out everything else. Maybe we can do a better job putting that out there, but I guess if we go forward, I guess I was hoping we would have those maps for our consideration when we meet on December 28th, and we could decide at that point and what's going in the report is kind of where I'm. So I would think anything else, you know, is that once that is presented to the council, you know, they would, in terms of their timing and when they would put things forth, I mean, they would have a work session, they would have other things, and then public discussion and comment on those things during their deliberations on the proposals.
Okay, just one more consideration for the chair. Someone mentioned something that caught my attention when he said he'd like to see a justification of each of these maps about why they did what they did. I talked about this maybe a month ago, didn't really push it because we have such a rush deadline. If we decide to actually move forward into January, still looking at the maps, I think what would be helpful to the public is if we took a look at each of the sections that were changed, especially now that they've been identified from Mr. Burt in that email to us on Saturday, to see if there's any sense of why in particular this part of the map moved over from one district to another. I think that'd be helpful for us. I think that'd be helpful particularly for the community to take a look at. And I continue to believe that the December 31st deadline is, while it's part of the resolution, it needs to be changed. And if we get past that deadline, I would hope we would spend more time literally comparing however many maps we want to look at and just talk about how each of them changed those areas. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Telford. Actually, I think that's a good suggestion. I mean, we can incorporate that into the draft report and the final report on the map, so it's very clear and people understand why the boundaries were shifted from one way to another and the rationale that went into producing the maps. Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Waddy.
I know everybody, we did hear a lot of comments about the rush nature of this process. I just want to remind some of the people who mentioned this, especially I think we had a couple members of the Republican Party express themselves as members of that, that the census was delayed from the president, Donald Trump. He stated on June 27th, 2019, that the census should be delayed. Then on April 14th of 2020, Donald Trump also that was to get a citizenship question on the census. And then on April 14th of 2020, he also had the census delayed yet again. And then as time went on, the delay in the census is what led to us receiving this information related to the census late. And then on top of that, it's not just one particular council that would be voting. There would be a possible next council that's voting. And if the next council votes on, as I've said, we've had delay, we've been talking about maps that are, from my perspective, maybe not from Esri redistricting's perspective, maybe not from Mr. Telford's perspective, but from my perspective, gerrymandered. And those gerrymandered maps would embarrassingly make this county the example for a gerrymandered map. And to continue debating that into January and then past the filing deadline would, one, as Ms. Mansfield said, possibly keep the same districts that we have, where we have 90,000 people living in one particular district, when the number, I think the ideal population was 83,600 some, as Mr. Burke said. And the next district, the district that has the least amount of people, District 7, has 79,000. So that, I think Mr. Kaufman stated previously, that the lesser number of people you have living in your district, you are receiving better representation. And I spent some time down in District 7 today, and I went to the Deal Library. I learned a lot about District 7. I've spoken with former candidates for elected office in District 7 for the school board. And when I hear rural, it has a different perspective for me when I hear what rural is. And when I see what rural is, and when I travel around and look at the heroin overdose numbers in rural areas throughout the county, when I see areas that don't have access to any healthcare options, their transportation options are limited. At the library, I was told that people have to call for a ride to get to the bus station, and they have to wait 4 hours, most likely, to be able to get to the bus in District 7. And that's been an issue from the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. They've been mentioning that for the past at least 2 years that I've heard that being mentioned. So the question about of representation and how well people would be represented, and who is getting what. I think we also heard previously that in District 7 that they wouldn't even want a Safeway, when we want to stay the fighting of big box, or even a small grocery store that would allow people to feed themselves. It just, like I said, it speaks to a different aspect of rural. And when we talk about keeping someplace rural, and that being what we base a map on, it's questionable for me. When I hear those things and when I speak with people who may be going through the worst times of their lives in a rural area, and their representation votes against or does not even advocate for additional funding for things that may help them, the poorest people, the people going through the hardest times, people that are being subjected to pollution daily. These people deserve respect. I will say that the district does believe in some semblance of democracy. They were willing to oppose the violent takeover of the Capitol, which shut down our entire region on January 6th. They were willing to oppose that. I can't say every district was willing to oppose that, but they were willing to oppose the violent shutdown due to the call for a rally on that day, which I don't know if everyone here has opposed. I don't know if everyone here even comes from a district that believes that or voted for the resolution opposing that. So that type of, I give them kudos for that. But in terms of having representation that can help the least of these, it needs to be mentioned in this meeting in terms of having timing. The timing of this discussion is related to delays in the census previously, which is what I already mentioned 3 meetings ago. It was about the census being delayed. That's why we're in this position that we're in, and that people want to continue to delay so that they can be better represented by the next election. So they expect the next election to be the place where they can change the maps, and then we'll hear a different tone, because that's what they do. They deflect, they deny, they dismiss, they demean. That's what they do. And that's how this conversation will continue to go, as previously stated, in future charter agreements. And this is the government document, the governing document of this county. And we're going to continue to have these discussions. First, you don't want to work during Christmas. Then we're working.
Mr.
We have to
Waddy,
start a
I'm
meeting
sorry.
at 7:15.
Mr. Waddy, I'm going to interrupt you there.
Okay. All right.
Appreciate your comments. I know you're very passionate and but I also think you're making some generalizations and maybe some accusations of some. And I would really,
it's true.
I would really prefer we do not have.
I
don't think that's appropriate. I don't think it's helpful. I think we have a serious job to do here, and I don't think those kind of statements are very helpful in getting our job done. So I'm going to ask if you would please refrain from making those kind of statements.
Can't promise to refrain from making those comments. I'm sorry.
All right. Mr. Snow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, if we decided to move forward with recommending another map that has not been presented to the public for review, would that have implications for our public testimony requirement? I mean, because I know we didn't present map 2 when we had the in-person hearing, and then it really wasn't clearly visible on the website. As a matter of fact, are any of the maps 1 through 4, besides 4B and 5, 6, and 7, are those on the website at all?
Yes, they are on the website.
Okay, but they're not under the current items. They're just kind of as resource items. So would we need to put those out? Like if we did map 2, for example, and decided to move forward with that, would that need to be put on the website and then perhaps give the public an opportunity to weigh in on map 2 as an option? Because I mean, I feel like once again, the public would be we would not have considered public. I mean, tonight we got some input on map 2, which I think most people didn't even know about, right? That you heard testimony that said they only saw 4B and 6B because that's what we had on the website. So what are your thoughts on if we decided to move forward with map 2 and recommending that as far as getting public input on that?
I guess my thought was we could have the discussion, planning and zoning could do the same type of analysis so we would have, in the one GIS document, we would have the simple adjustment 2, we would have 4B and have 6B. I mean, I guess I was not thinking we would have another public hearing for comment on that, but we could have it out there. We could still publicize. Members of the public could provide comment through the testimony tool. We could use that and have our conversations. But then at the point in time when those recommendations would go to the council, I mean, that would also be on the council website. They would be discussing it in all of their work sessions, like their introductory meeting, their work session, as well as their public hearing. So they would have an option at that time to weigh in. And I think my thought is that I'm just feeling like that gives us I don't want to say balance. That's probably not the right word. And balance, I hate when people say balance because like the balanced approach kind of thing. But I think it gives 3 solid options that fit the needs, but it kind of addresses or reflects conversations that we've had. That's my point.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Fleckenstein, or maybe I should, well, I know, Mr. Burt, your hand is up. Maybe I'll let you speak next. I think you're going to talk about the location of the maps, and I guess I do have a question for you too, so go ahead, and then Tom, I'll get to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Burt from the Office of Planning and Zoning. I just want to remind the commissioners that there were 7 maps presented on December 1st. We did present all these statistics and demographics with those, and it's available in the presentation from December 1st.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Burt. I guess in a real quick question, I know Mr. Telford was asking earlier about providing a justification with each map and in the change areas. I guess I know I jumped in quickly and said, yes, I thought that's a good idea and something we should do, but maybe I should have asked you about that first in terms of timing. But I know when you pulled these together, in some, especially for 4B and 6B, you have some justifications already in there. And is that something that's fairly, is it workable, and I don't want to say fairly easy, but possible for you to do in the timeframes that we're working under?
So what I did for plans 4B and 6B was give a description of the boundary, starting at a point and giving a general description of the boundary. No rationalization on how the district was developed. I can say when we were working in the ESRI redistricting software, looking at the districts, it was based on population and trying to balance out the districts to try to get it within the deviation from the ideal population and trying to get the population closer to the ideal population or the target population.
Okay. So putting in that type of description and justification is very doable as we
a description, yes. A justification on why a census block was included. It would be to include X number of population to increase it by this much for this district.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Fleckenstein.
Thank you. Mr. Burt actually addressed one of my issues, which was the fact that every one of these maps has been discussed in our public forum, at least in our meetings at different points in time, and certainly at different points on the county website have been clearly accessible to some people. A couple things. When we were looking at obviously we've still got some time here where we still have obviously online, the ability to get online public comment from folks between now and the end of the year. And if we go longer than that, obviously beyond that, I'm wondering, Laura, if there's ways that we could, what you brought up to kind of show where information's available and where it would be linked and where we would find it. It might be helpful maybe if we had some kind of like right in the banner, something that talks about redistricting or something that draws attention to redistricting a little bit more, or the Charter Revision Commission a little bit more, and maybe throw in a link to some of the census data or a link to OPZ. I think there's probably ways, while I don't agree that it's not accessible to the public, I think there could be ways of making it a little more accessible over the next couple of weeks, and maybe those are some ways of doing that. And beyond that, as far as map consideration, we could take any of the maps that we've got and really tweak them around and turn them into something different. So, the idea that we would not be in a position to look at other iterations of the map or even redraw these maps, I wouldn't agree with that concept. I certainly don't think at any point we considered ourselves wedded to these particular maps, particularly in advance of any kind of public comment, which I'm pleased to say we've gotten some good public feedback, I think.
Okay, Ms. Blair Klassmeyer, your hand is up.
Yeah, just briefly, Lori Blair Klassmeyer, Deputy County Attorney. I want to go back just real quick to the justification explanation issue. Mr. Burt's right. He can explain, the kind of the changes that were made and to balance population and how it helped balance population. I think as the person who has volunteered to ultimately draft your report, there should also be some explanation of why you chose a particular map to move forward with. And I think, ultimately when you do vote on which maps you're going to move forward, I think that should be included so that it can be part of the ultimate report.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Blair Klassmeyer. Appreciate that. All right, Mr. Fleckenstein, is your hand still up? Oh, okay.
I did not intend it to be, I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right, Mr. Waddy, I see your hand.
I just want to say, map 4B, I know there were concerns about the heart of Glen Burnie being moved from District 4 to District 1. And I just wanted to call that out. And also in terms of district, I think it was District I heard one of our members of the public that spoke also speak about District 3 and in map 4B having some movement there as well. So I just wanted to highlight those things. And I wanted to mention that the Office of Planning and Zoning did describe thoroughly maps 1 through 4 in previous meetings as well. I think he mentioned Mr. Burt mentioned the meeting that we had in December, but he also gave a description at the meetings in November. It was our first in-person meeting. He gave a description of what his thoughts were regarding the maps, how they were altered to match the population changes and the demographic changes associated with them. So there's been ample opportunity to hear why the maps look the way that they do. I think the only maps that really need significant justification are ones that are radical. And, if we're only going to do 2 maps, I don't think we need to have any radical maps to be presented to the council. I would go with maps that are logical, already vetted. They've already been vetted, and people know what districts they're in. They're not becoming members of island peninsulas, islands on the peninsulas in their districts. So, and they're not, they're not becoming part of the fire-breathing dragon. So, or the maps that we have been vetted. These maps that we're talking about in terms of adjusting the population slightly are in the simple adjustment maps have been vetted, and they have a more contiguity around them. So, and to say that we need to have a better understanding of all of these issues is to say that there hasn't been major changes in the past, 5 years in regards to what the court looks at and how maps are viewed. We don't all have to be legal scholars to be able to identify how citizens and how residents are thought about in their districts. You don't have to be a demographer to be able to do those things. You can see them, and you can understand. And as we've said previously, the representation that people receive can be addressed in other ways other than these maps. They don't need to be solely left to the maps. Part of the biggest issue with representation in this county is around the political parties and their inability to negotiate with the various factions within them. So that's one of the biggest issues that we are not going to be able to address regarding representation. And these maps that we have do not, as I've said previously to all of our members, changing the map significantly is not going to improve representation alone. So, we don't need to be legal scholars. We don't need to be demographers, and changing the map significantly is going to be more problematic than any slight change that would affect only small portions of the population. I think map 2 has already stated that in certain districts, I think in District 2, there's zero. Let's see, map 2 had 0 changes. District 2 had 0 changes. Population wise, I want to say it was 2, 5, and 7 did not have any deviations outside of 0. So those are the only districts that would change are those ones. So the ones that are outside of the 2, I want to say 2, 5, and 7. So, or 2, 3, and 7. Sorry, 2, 3, and 7. So it'd be 1, 5, 6, and 4 that would change in map 2, and 2, 3, and 7 would not even change. So that's why I suspect it was brought up by the previous council member who actually had to make this decision previously, and was not an expert at the time himself, but was able to negotiate and identify common interests between groups that wanted to see the government function and improve government activity, and not just get what they want, how they want, when they want, by any means necessary.
Mr. Waddy. All right, Mr. Snow, I see your hand.
Question for you. So given the feedback that has been provided about 6B, which I was grateful to get feedback from the community, from the public comment aspect of this, and from the fellow commissioners, if I wanted to make adjustments or I wanted to try to come up with something that still reflects my desire to really reimagine that growth over in the western part of the county, and I wanted another map for consideration, what does that process look like?
Well, what I was hoping that we could do tonight in our map deliberations would be to talk about 4B and 6B and talk about if there were changes or tweaks we'd like to see made, because I know I have a couple tweaks I would like to see to map 4B, and I was hoping we would have that conversation here tonight in our public meeting, and we would give that direction to the Office of Planning and Zoning, and they could make those tweaks and get mapped to us, I don't know, in the next week or so. And then if we wanted to bring another map into the discussion, I was hoping we would have that discussion here tonight, and also give OPZ the direction to do the same type of analysis with another map. So that's kind of how I was hoping we would move forward. We wouldn't be going back, and our members would not be going back and making changes, opposing new things. We would be discussing those items in the maps that are kind of on the table, and we would have planning and zoning make the tweaks that we would be interested in.
Well, I think my thought is that with the public testimony and with many of the things that I've been hearing, which again, I didn't have the benefit of, when we did this, even now I'm thinking maybe there's a more fundamental way to address some of these concerns, but, I need time to process this, right? So I could even know what to recommend. Like I can't even think about, how do we offer something that would actually work? And so would I have to, if I want time to digest everything that I've heard, would I have to make this recommendation in our next meeting? Because again, I just, like I said, the feedback came through, we've had more time to think about it. Obviously there's, thoughts about a simple adjustment, things like that. How do I allow myself time to process this and then still get something for planning and zoning so that we can introduce something in our final report that reflects, my application of what the community has said? Because I can't do it. Like we just heard the testimony. I'm not very good at just like thinking and changing the maps on the fly. Like I'd like a couple days to be able to process those changes and think about what I might offer instead.
I guess I'm curious. I mean, when you said what you might offer, I mean, drastic changes to what we've already dealt with or looked at?
Clearly, so like the feedback, so a couple of items of feedback came in for like Crofton, for example, the Broadneck Peninsula. Like if that was clearly something, and even Commissioner Waddy had mentioned, the idea that you've got something, isolated on an island. And as we, heard from a few people, that's something that is, not as palatable as we thought that might be, even in our discussions. And so, what does that, how does that change happen, right? If we move that back in, what else has to move? And then, because everything is cascading, right? Any change that we make is going to have ripple effects across the entire map. Do I just say planning and zoning, all right, give me the same idea of the map, but make the Broadneck Peninsula, be part of the district, and somehow figure out a way to keep Crofton in? Do I just provide that kind of guidance, or would the desire from planning and zoning be for me to think carefully about what changes should be made and then present that to them? Should I just tell them generally, make my map more likable to the public?
I mean, I would like us to have the conversation this evening. I mean, I think this back and forth is difficult. I know there were some comments made. I don't know if that was enough direction in some cases for Mr. Burt to go forward, but I mean, I guess I would like to have the conversation now. That way planning and zoning has clear direction. And I guess my preference would be at this point that, I mean, we have planning and zoning, there are experts, there are GIS
Sure.
experts, they have the software and the programs that I think, we should rely on them and rely on our experts to do the maps for us at this point.
So then, can I go down the list of some of the things at least that I'm thinking about?
Well, let me hold on one second, because I see Ms. Pompa's hand is up and she's with planning and zoning. So let me let them weigh in and then we can circle back. Ms. Pompa?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The only thing that this is Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. The thing that I think that is important at this point is that the commission agree on the changes that they are directing the Office of Planning and Zoning to make to the maps, and that it be done through a motion. Because all of the members could recommend things that conflict with each other. So we need to be given clear direction as to what kind of changes the commission would like to see in the maps at this point.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pompa. All right, before we get into that detail, because I know a couple other, Ms. Hangleiter's had her hand up, and Mr. Fleckenstein's hand went up. Let's take those comments and we can get back onto the discussion about changes to maps for OPZ. Ms. Hangleiter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to just comment that I look back through the report from the last time, from back in 2011, and it seems like we're doing basically the exact same thing that they did. And Ms. Shute would probably be able to provide more background beyond the minutes. But essentially, they started out with a bunch of different maps that were what they were thinking and what they thought was going to be best. And then they ended back up with a tweak to what the existing maps were. However, I also believe that if all that this was ever meant to be done was a simple tweak, there would be no need for a charter revision commission. There'd be no need for us to spend, we've now met 8 times for what seems to be on average about 3 hours each time to do a simple tweak. That tweak could have been done by Ms. Pompas and Mr. Burt and sent directly to the county. I think it's our responsibility, even if a tweak is what ends up passing, I think it's absolutely our responsibility to follow through on all of the maps and continue to discuss them.
Thank you, Ms. Hangleiter. Mr. Fleckenstein.
Just to kind of piggyback onto what Mr. Snow was saying, what I was going to suggest is, if at this point we're kind of talking a little bit in circles, would it make sense for us at this point? At this point, we've got however many maps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4B, or 1, 2, 3, 4B, 5, 6B, and 7. Would it make some sense to see if we get a sense of the council, if there's ones of the commission that we don't want to move forward with? Would it make sense to have a discussion and at least start to pare this down? In other words, to say, hey, is there anybody here who thinks we would want to continue with discussion of map 1? And if the answer is no, we agree that map 1's off the table. We move on to map 2, we move on to map 3. Obviously, we keep 4B and 6B open for discussion to the extent that we've already agreed to sort of do that. But maybe that would help focus a little bit. Maybe that would help, put people in a position to say, okay, what would we potentially change to 6B? I mean, it's an interesting point raised by Ms. Pompa. There might not be a majority of us that really have a whole lot of an idea of how we would want to change any one of the particular maps, but maybe there's a map of the 2 or 3 or 4 that we get down to that we're like, okay, I'm comfortable moving forward with those.
We only have 6 members here. So who's going to be the tiebreaker if there's a tie?
If we have a tie, then something doesn't pass. In other words, if I say, hey, anybody want to move forward with map 3 and we vote 3-3, well, then it's still in the mix. But I would suspect on most of this, we're not going to have any kind of tie. I think we've got a lot of consensus on certain aspects of the map. So I think it's when we get down to what we recommend that there's going to be a little more discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Fleckenstein. Mr. Burt, your hand is up.
I was just going to a point from planning and zoning. I was going to say if we want to take a look at the maps again, we can. I can share my screen. We can go through them. Unfortunately, the web apps or the web tools are not functioning right now for some reason. I've tried several times to open them up and get them rolling. But I do have the alternative ways of showing you guys the maps if you want to take a look at them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. I guess before we kind of go through all the maps, I know, as we know, maps 4B and 6B, we had a subcommittee look at them, develop them. A lot of work has gone into them. I guess I would like to start with the two of those and talk through changes and look for consensus to move forward with tweaks on those to give planning and zoning that direction. And then I think then we can talk about the other maps and if we want to add any other maps into the mix, if that's workable. And Mr. Fleckenstein, I see your hand.
It is. And can you all see me now?
Mm-hmm.
You can see you before.
I can see you.
No, I just, because if that's the way to do it, I'm going to, again, try to be the mean guy here and say, why don't we kind of get down to it? I'm looking at map 4B. Could I ask all of you to look at map 4B? And I would just say that from my perspective, particularly in light of the information we got from Mr. Burt on Monday night, which for me on this issue, I thought was very helpful. There's a couple of things about this map that jump out at me that make it something I don't like at this point, where I may have had not as many problems with it previously, and I'll try to just hit on the bigger parts of it. But if we look at District 2, and we look northeast of Ritchie Highway, right above, right near where it meets Marley Creek, the river, not the road, and then as it abuts District 3. I mean, candidly, I'm struggling to see how this map makes any sense when you're going to cut essentially the Glen Burnie Town Center in half into two different districts. I mean, that's really always kind of been the heart of Glen Burnie, a huge part of District 2. You've got the Arundel neighborhood, which is a large neighborhood on both sides of Ritchie Highway. There's a lot of homes on both sides of Ritchie Highway. That's a neighborhood that is obviously contiguous. It's obviously something that's been put together a long time. There's one community association, for instance, for Arundel, that if we were to do this would split that. I have a lot of concern about taking Glen Burnie High School and the surrounding areas out of District 2 and putting that into District 1, where if we're concerned about schools, you're throwing that in with a couple of other high schools, and you don't have District 2 with Glen Burnie High School anymore, despite the fact that you're going to have portions of District 2 and District 1 that are feeding kids into Glen Burnie High School. I think that's a hugely fatal flaw with map 4B. It's not the only one, but if I was asking for tweaks to map 2, I would strongly suggest that those portions of Arundel and a little bit area south be taken out of 3 and put back into 2. And certainly that entire part of Arundel going all the way up through Marley Creek, and the Point Pleasant areas up there, the Furnace Branch area, all those areas that have historically been associated with and feed school systems and community associations in District 2 be put back into that and taken out of District 1. And I likewise have a problem with the change from District 5 to District 3. You can see this area, again, I'm going to say east of Ritchie Highway, going out. It's a little bit south of 100. It's going out the Lake Shore. And there's a number of different areas there that have been added to District 5. And even though a number of those areas have Severna Park addresses, a large portion of those nonetheless are in the Chesapeake school system. And I likewise think it's a fatal flaw to have, you essentially would have District 3 would have, it appears, all of the Northeast High School and feeder system, but not all of the Chesapeake. District 5 would then have part of the Chesapeake and would have, I believe, at least one of the elementary or middle schools, don't quote me on that, that feeds into Chesapeake. So I would say another tweak to map 4B that I would like to see would be to have that area essentially stay with District 3 to stay with the communities that it's been with in District 3, but most importantly, to kind of keep that school district as much in District 3 represented by the District 3 council person and obviously the school board member going forward as well. There's some other minor tweaks that I would like, but those to me are the biggest ones, and I'd like to throw those out for discussion and encourage the commission to agree that those changes be presented to planning and zoning to modify District 2, 3, and 5 and 1 based on those comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fleckenstein. I guess if I could add one change to that might help balance some things out between District 4 and District 2. I know the Odenton Town Center gets some piece of that along 175 gets pushed into District 2. And I guess I would like to see that actually stay in District 4. I think it's important for the Odenton Town Center. It is a designated growth area that's been identified by the county, also as part of the GDP. And I think keeping that together just for community purposes and communities of interest purposes is really important. So I would like to see the Odenton Town Center remain wholly in District 4 as a part of the changes to that map. I guess, does anyone have any concerns or comments on that? Actually, Mr. Telford, I see your hand.
When we make changes to 4B, are we saying that 4B is gone, or are we going to have a 4C that we can at some point actually compare to each other?
That's a great question.
Actually, yeah, I guess I didn't envision 4B being gone. Yeah, probably the best way to do that would be doing a 4C. Is that what you would suggest also, Mr. Burt? The best way? Yeah, I think that's the easy, yeah.
That would be the
that would be
easiest.
compare. Yep.
Keep the 4 series running. You know, if there's a 4C, a 4D, as long as we keep making tweaks to the original map 4, we'll continue calling it 4, whatever we need to.
Okay, great. All right, any commission members have any concerns if we have planning and zoning work on those tweaks to become map 4C? Let's to look at.
I have no objections.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any objection to planning and zoning working on the maps. I don't necessarily see why we need to have we can take the suggestions to them, send them the suggestions. I actually think we should record the suggestions and send it to the council if they feel like they should those things should be changed. That's up to them. I really don't. I think we should record, have everybody submit the plan changes that they see from these maps, and if the council feels as though those changes are legitimate, then that should be their prerogative after they look at what planning and zoning has to do. I don't necessarily see this council, especially, or this commission, I should say, being the decision makers. And so I think we should record what it is that, people may want to see changed, have Mr. Burt work on it over the next, prior to I think you have the January meeting date that you have, and that the council is going to be meeting to discuss our final report. We can submit those plan changes for the final report. That way we don't have to, overburden Mr. Burt with maps, but we can, get the changes into Ms. Klausmeyer, and then, have them be presented to the council in our report.
I think what we're doing here, Mr. Waddy, is proposing tweaks we would like to see so we could develop our recommendation and what our proposals are going to be to go to the council. I feel if we leave them in a way where we're just providing a list of comments to them, we're not really providing a final report in any way to them. I mean, they can take, once we have our final product, they can take and do whatever they want with it. I think we are here to provide, the best options we can develop and send it to them. So I think
we're past providing our best options. We've been inundated with the worst options, And so we need to just move from this idyllic situation into, because we're, like I said, we're not experts. We're not demographers. We have a couple lawyers, but, you know, I don't know. Do they practice voting rights? Or, you know, that's the question, is what type of practice do they have? And then, you know, like I said, I think we should, you know, submit those. We can submit our suggested changes to these maps to you, and then we can move forward from there as having them part of our comment section for each one of these maps, because we did talk about having a comment section regarding these maps, and having suggested changes it could definitely be an aspect of that. You know, there's no need for us to have OPZ go and make more maps based off of our randomized suggestions.
Well, I don't think we're making randomized suggestions. I think we are proposing tweaks to the maps we have to make them better.
There will be randomized suggestions. There will be random suggestions coming from left field, as we've seen.
Thank you, Mr. Waddy, for your comments. Thank you. Ms. Hangleiter.
Thank you. Mr. Fleckenstein, thank you for pointing out that Arundel is split. I didn't realize that that division of that line was the same community. That area is very densely populated. So as we talk about recombining that area, as we're trying to give planning and zoning some options, where would you suggest the population come back from? You know, as we put them in, then we're going to be left with one being very light, two being very heavy. Any suggestions on where that population should come from?
I do. I think one of the suggestions already, candidly, has come from Ms. Mansfield. You've got that portion in the southwestern part of the new District 2, not the new District 2, but the MAP 4B District 2. I think that's an easy area to do it. And candidly, another one of the issues I have with this map is how far west it goes and how it breaks up some of the communities over in and around Fort Meade, in and around like the Meade High School area, the Pioneer City area over that way. So I think that you would, in order to kind of reconnect those communities in the eastern part, the northeastern part of the district, it's very simple to do that by taking the areas here that now have gone into the western side out of District 2, whether they stay in District 1, whether they go into District 4. Obviously, we know there's going to be some movement in the borders when we do that, but that's the way I would do it. I would essentially say that we basically shift District 2 back to the northeast, and that would take out the area that Ms. Mansfield recommended, and I would put some of those West County districts that would make up the very western part of District 2 back into District 1 or District 4, or apportion them between those two districts or into those two districts or one of those two districts at that point in time.
Okay, thank you very much. It's just such a densely populated area. That's, I think, like both options could be possible, but the only way I see that that's really going to be possible is also to go back to District 1, following down further down the west side of the county, which at one point I thought that was what we were trying to stop, but that's, you know, it's all the numbers game. So I just thought we should provide more clarification. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think as we're learning and from what we started and some of the ideas we had at the beginning of the process, when you really do start to see, I think you start to see the reason that in the past couple of redistrictings, the council council hasn't really modified the districts all that much, because you do, as Mr. Snow pointed out, you know, you get an unintended consequence at some other border where you're like, oh, well, yeah, you're right. We don't want to take you. We heard a number of people say in Crofton, we want to stay in number 7, you know, and obviously that's an area that's at a border. And so you're right. It's harder and harder to move the districts around a lot because you're breaking up areas. And so my approach, at least looking at 4, for instance, and making some of these suggestions is, okay, what are the actual kind of the hearts or the main parts of what those districts have generally been? And certainly when we're talking District 2, that focus historically has been more for like Glen Burnie, for instance, than it is the western part of the county. Whereas, some of the communities on the border in the western part of the county, they've been in that area before, or Crofton close to 7, or things of that nature. There's obviously no perfect way that I see, at least, to adjust without having those impacts on some of those what I call the border communities of the district. So you're correct. But again, I think as we've gone through the process more, it kind of shows why it's very, very difficult to move those borders drastically without breaking up some communities that have been together forever and are together for obvious reasons, right? There's older parts of the county, Glen Burnie being a perfect example, that really their entire infrastructure, their communities, their neighborhood associations, their school districts are together and have been together. And moving those districts around all of a sudden makes it harder to justify breaking those things up, and much easier to understand why they should be kept together. And not just in those areas, those are just examples. That's obviously areas across the county where that's true.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Snow.
No, I just wanted to, I didn't know if it would be necessary, but I wanted to affirm the recommendations. Just to let them know that I do like the idea of making the recommendations and then being able to see them. For me, I'm interested in seeing them in the tool. So to me, it's not quite sufficient just to make a list of changes. We should make the changes and then see them in the tool. And, we are on a compressed timeline. So, very, very sorry about that. But I do think it would be important if we're going to send something over to the council. So anyway, I was wondering if it would be necessary for me to make a motion to proceed with this process and take a vote on it and avoid the back and forth.
Okay, got it. You mean just the process that we have planning and zoning take adjustments into consideration and do that? I guess, do we have consensus on that? I feel like we generally have consensus on that.
Yes,
I have one individual that does not, maybe it is better. Do we want to take a vote? Or
I mean, a formal vote, if we feel it's necessary, I guess we can do, but I tend to agree with okay. I mean,
I'm willing to submit to majority rule. Majority can rule, and I won't necessarily come to your homes or anything. So.
Okay. Well, again, I don't know that we're having a discussion like that. I mean, but the only thing I would add to what Mr. Snow said is I found what Mr. Burt presented to us Monday night to be particularly helpful in analyzing the maps. And
Absolutely.
So to the extent that we're tweaking a map to then get that same exposition, if possible, on the 28th, if that's what you're asking, Mr. Snow, that would be the process we would want to do, I would say that would be something I think we would have consensus on. I'm in favor of that as well.
Excellent.
Okay, I guess just to move things forward in a way that provides clear direction, why don't we go ahead and make a motion on that and vote so we can move it forward.
So moved.
That way.
Second.
Okay, thank you both. So all in favor of having OPZ reiterate, I don't want to say reiterate, that's not the word I'm thinking, reflect and recreate the maps for us based on the changes that we are describing and have them reflected in the mapping tool. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Hey.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Was that,
okay.
How many days was
we had one opposing.
Oh, okay.
So it was five yay, one nay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Pompa?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify that I believe that I heard all the changes related to map 4B and not to 6B. And I think in the motion you mentioned maps. And so I just want some clarification. Thank you.
Correct. That was just a vote to clarify our process, and that planning and zoning will reflect the changes that we discussed and approved now going forward in the mapping tool, and send those to us so we can look at them and kind of dissect them in the same manner we did 4B and 6B. So now I'm going to move on to map 4B.
Thank you.
We discussed a number of changes there. And to be honest, I'm not going to be able to summarize those right now. So I guess I'm hoping planning and zoning, or you were taking notes, or someone was taking good notes on that as Mr. Fleckenstein went through those changes and so forth. But I guess Ms. Pompos, your hand up again. Did you?
It is.
Okay.
So Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. Mr. Fleckenstein went through everything very quickly. I tried to take notes. I mean, in order for us to understand, we are going to have to go back through the recording, and hopefully we'll be able to understand all the pieces that he is looking for. And I don't know if Mr. Burt has anything more he would like to say on that.
Okay, well, we can run through them again probably pretty quickly. Can we, Mr. Fleckenstein? So we can be sure that they have.
I'm happy to do that, and then I may throw out another suggestion, but specifically the Arundel community, and then the entirety of the northeastern part of what is now District 2, that in 4B is in District 1. And that's all that area to the northeast of Ritchie Highway, which includes a portion of Arundel, it includes a portion of Glen Burnie, it includes the Glen Burnie High School area. I would like to see that moved back into District 2. And in order to accommodate that, I would like to, I guess, support Ms. Mansfield's suggestion that this little portion of the new the map 4B District 2 that is in the southeastern border of District 2, which is in what is now District 4, would be returned to District 4. And then that when the population for District 2 shifts, in order to accommodate the change that I'm asking for in the northeast part of the district, that the district shift west, and that those areas there that border to the east of Ridge Road, that's where we would start, and we would move the new District 2 further out of District 1 and closer to the old District 2. Or the current District 2. I don't want to call it the old District 2.
So
also,
I'm sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Fleckenstein. I just want a clarification. So we're looking at Ridge Road, that change area, and moving, I thought I heard you say west. Do you mean
to move that east, essentially east. To move that area. Okay. I guess essentially we're kind of, in my ideal world, we're shifting District 2 on map 4B to the northeast. And so we would be taking those areas that now go on border Ridge Road that are part of the proposed District 2. I guess population-wise, they would need to stay in District 1. And then the portion that's in District 4, that portion, I guess, which includes parts of Odenton Town Center, as has been pointed out by the chair, would go back into District 4. And then the other area of major concern to me was, if you go right to the border, if you go to the Route 2 border between District 5 and District 3, you've got this area that you can kind of see. It's just south of Route 100. You can kind of see it's when you get to the very top of the Magothy River.
Bound by Route 2 and the Magothy River, and then the Magothy Stream. I think that's Magothy Stream at the top there.
I think that's correct. In those areas, again, I think you're getting into that eastern side of Route 2 going into what I think a lot of people consider the Pasadena area. Essentially, I think the border of what is currently District 3 is outlined there. I think that those areas there should remain in District 3 and not be in District 5 for all the reasons that I mentioned, not the least of which is their inclusion in the Chesapeake High School feeder area there. And then I don't have any specific recommendation on where that population would go from 5. Perhaps it would go in a little bit north into 2, or a little bit east into or west into 4. I'd have to look at the current iteration. I mean, honestly, looking at these maps, this could be easier. I mean, a lot of what I'm looking at is really in map 2. So it might candidly be easier just to say we should start looking at map 2.
Okay. All right. I see a couple hands up, but any comments about what Mr. Fleckenstein just mentioned? We should start looking at map 2.
In terms of comments he made about Ridge Road, are you asking about that?
Well, I was really asking more. He mentioned starting to look at map 2 instead of trying to continue adjusting map 4B.
Yeah.
I was really asking about that issue specifically.
I understand. I mean, moving to map 2 would be great. But either way, I think we should submit all of these questions, all of these statements in writing to you, and that can go to our Office of Planning and Zoning, because it's 9:40 right now, and almost everything that's related to these maps is going to be in contention. And so we can be debating this for another, 16 meetings. And we should, I think, move forward with, if we're going to do 2 maps, I would say map 2 and map 4B, since those have been the ones that we've been debating. But, and we heard much about, hey, Kitty, and we've heard so much about from our public testimony. So I'm not, because everything in terms of moving on map 4B, talked about moving. I see this change around Ridge Road, Reese Road, moving them from the current District 1 and District 2. I would definitely oppose any of that. So that's, but that's all related to this population shifting. It's something that, and also we were talking about moving parts around Jessup from District 1 to District 4 from that map. It's not something that I can find to be favorable, but.
Well, I guess how about
that I would suggest we make changes to, which I would love to do in writing to our chairperson, so that we can submit that, as opposed to having a debate about these population changes where we don't see the balloon squeeze getting bigger at the other end. Can't see it, so we're not going to. Just let's get it to you, and then we can have Ms. Klausmeyer put it in our report, and that way we can just submit it along with the maps that we have at this current moment.
Well, I guess, Mr. Waddy, as a commission, we've already had that discussion, and we voted that we were going to discuss the changes, and we were going to give them the planning and zoning so they could create the maps and the changes that are being discussed. As in, maybe what we could do, and I guess planning and zoning, let me know. I know the changes Mr. Fleckenstein was describing may move things closer to simple adjustment 2. However, is that something or a comparison you can do as you're redrawing things and looking at that? And if we find it's close to that, or you could maybe advise us. I guess I'm trying to get us to move on to talking about the next map. But I mean, is that something in your analysis? I mean, if you did a comparison of map 4B with the changes in 2, I mean, we would see how close we are and what that would look like. Maybe you can do that analysis and provide that information back to us.
So comparing 4B and 2?
Well, the changes that Mr. Fleckenstein was discussing.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, I think we need to discuss and whether, and probably take a vote as to whether the commission is in agreement of so having planning and zoning make the adjustments to the map based on those comments and that description. It seemed like we were okay in that front, but I mean, if we do that, I mean, we might find it is very similar to simple adjustment 2 once those adjustments are made, and maybe maybe that makes things a little easier in terms of what we might be recommending. But
it's almost like a side-by-side comparison once the changes are made.
Yes, which we would actually, yeah. Is that Mr. Fleckenstein?
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, that was kind of my point. As I'm going through the areas that I would change on map 4B, it starts to look a lot more like map 2. And I'm just suggesting, for the purpose of making this a little bit easier than you guys trying to transcribe my changes, maybe we can make some of those tweaks to 4B, but I'm thinking more and more it's just going to be simpler to say, let's look at map 2 and have that potentially as a map that we're discussing. Although, again, at this point, I guess they're all open for discussion, which back to my earlier question of should we eliminate some? But so I guess I would then formally say to the commission, I think we should start to we should bring map 2 into our discussion along with 4B and 6B.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second. All right. So all in favor of bringing in map 2 into the discussion with 4B and 6B? Say aye. Aye. All right.
All right.
Then
I don't have any more
Fleckenstein.
comment on 4B then, and I don't have any comment on 2 at this point. I want to hear what Mr. Burt has to say about 2 along the lines of what he gave us for 4B and 6B. Again, I found that incredibly helpful. Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to now be quiet, and so that we can hopefully all go to bed at a reasonable hour.
Yep. All right, Mr. Snow, I see your hand.
Yes. Well, actually, are we moving on to the discussion on 6B?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think we kind of had, well, I guess we had a motion and it was just seconded and we voted to consider maps 2, 4B, and 6B. But yes, I think planning and zoning needs direction on modifications to 6B that we need to discuss. So, yes. Yep.
So I think that I'll provide this as best that I can. It was ironic, the accusations being made about minority representation. My map actually creates the strongest minority representation of everything that has been proposed. And so keeping in mind the concerns about the Broadneck Peninsula and, over in that region, I would like planning and zoning to consider an alternative configuration that keeps the peninsula more or less together, but also keeps District 2, District 1, and District 4 relatively intact. Again, I'm very insistent that the West County have stronger representation, and this configuration actually does that regardless of whatever anyone suspects. I am focused on West County having strong representation. So if planning and zoning is able to come up with a configuration that is able to kind of keep that stronger weight over in the West County, which has literally half of our population in it, and still able to maintain the integrity of, the Broadneck Peninsula, maybe, play around with District 7 and 6 and how that plays out. Is that enough guidance for you to make a recommendation for revisions to the map? Or do you need anything more specific? Because I don't have the census tracts. I don't have the population or the pop-ups or anything. I think that's just kind of the feedback that I'd like to incorporate.
Just let me make sure I'm clear on them. So bringing District 6 back across the river off Broadneck Peninsula,
right.
trying to keep West County kind of how it is right now.
Yes.
In 6B, and then looking a way to reconfigure 7, 6, and 5 to balance out between the 3 of those.
And if it's not too hard, Crofton remaining within District 4 would be a higher priority. I know, but if it's not, best that you can, and it is what it is, right? I think my goal has just been to challenge us to rethink. But again, I'll remind the commission that this configuration actually provides extremely strong representation to communities that are typically neglected. The new District 2 would allow a concentrated voice from some of our most neglected communities in the county, Severn, Pioneer City, all of that. Like the opportunity is just astonishing what we could do from a representation standpoint. So that's what I have, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And so Mr. Burt, that gives you clear enough direction? Okay. All right. So then could we get a motion? I'm sorry, do you have?
I was just going to respond. Yes, it does, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So then could we get a motion to move forward making the proposed changes by Mr. Snow to map iteration 6B?
So moved.
And could I get a second?
Second.
Second. Great. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Hey.
All right, so we have 5 ayes and one nay. Okay, awesome. All right, so I know planning and zoning, so I hope that's clear direction for you guys. And I know we have a meeting again. I know we still have other business on the agenda, but just to wrap this up. Okay, so, and I know, I guess any sense in the timeline, or how long you think it might take to get those changes made to the maps for our consideration?
I'll start on them tomorrow, and we'll have an idea for once I get into them. I'll let Ms. Corby know, and she can let the rest of the commission know.
Okay. Okay. Great.
I'll have a better sense tomorrow afternoon, late morning afternoon.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay. Anything for other business? I'm sorry, and your cat's back, Miss Blair Klassmeyer. It's like, it's great.
It's actually a different one.
Oh, really?
I went a little crazy during COVID. I ended up with. They're the entertainment for the end of this meeting.
Yeah. It helped. Thank you. All right. I see a couple hands went up. Mr. Fleckenstein.
In light of where we just discussed those maps, I'm going to go back to a point I made earlier and see if there's an appetite to do the following. But I think in light of that, I would make a motion that we, at this point, eliminate any of the other maps other than 2, the 4B, the 6B, and any of the potential tweaks that Mr. Burt may make based on our recommendations tonight. In other words, if we get a 4C and a 6C, I would move that the other maps 1, 3, 5, 7, whatever the other maps happen to be, that we eliminate them and concentrate going forward on these 3 and potential tweaks or modifications or iterations of these maps. I think that will help concentrate us somewhat. So that's my motion.
Okay, great. I think that's a great motion. All right, we have a second from Mr. Snow. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Great. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Fleckenstein. Good motion and suggestion. Thank you.
Every now and then it's the necktie.
Okay, Mr. Snow, I see your hand is up.
Sure. I just actually wanted to express appreciation to the commission for your patience and for your work. And I just have to say, with all the resistance that I had, and I still have my reservations, I feel a lot better about where we are. Still would like more time, still would like more community input, but we've made an incredible amount of progress, and I'm actually quite happy with the progress we've made. So only have a little faith, I suppose.
Oh, no.
See that?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Snow. We appreciate that. Yeah, so I guess this is what our 8th meeting, 9th meeting? We put in a lot of work. Okay, I guess any items for other business?
Did we approve the minutes from the last meeting? Do we have to do that officially?
No, we don't have those yet.
Okay.
Actually, we'll have at our next meeting on the 28th, we'll have both sets of public hearing minutes and things for our approval. We just thought it'd be easier to combine those together and have us approve them all at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. I guess if there's no other business, I guess, well, first I'll say everyone have a happy holiday. I look forward to seeing everyone's faces right after the holiday for our final discussions and review of maps. Yeah, thank you for all your hard work. It's been good. But I
Agreed.
think I
Happy
can-
holidays to everyone and all your families. I agree with Mr. Snow. It's been an interesting discussion so far, but it's been a pleasure working with you all so far, and I do think we've made progress, and I think it bodes well for our being able to work very well together over the next year when we get into some of the charter review issues we'd all like to discuss. So my best to all of your families.
Yes. Yep. And thank you. All right. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
In a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. All right, guys. Thanks. Have a
Thanks,
great
everybody.
night.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Recording stopped.
Have a good night. I think it's Lauren. Take care. Happy holidays.
Oh, thank you, Emmanuel. Happy holidays to you. Thanks for being here.